Grace. There we go. Welcome to Grace School of Theology. I'm Chaplain Ken, and I'm the director for the chaplain program here at Grace. I am a transplant from Southern California, so can I see how many hands are here from Southern California?
What's up?
Well, this is my beautiful bride of 39 years, so I'm thankful for that. And our organization, you can see the banners on both sides. We started off in 2001 with disaster-based chaplaincy, crisis response under National Center for Chaplain Development. And over time, that morphed to Care Force. And Care Force has been developing crisis response chaplains and teams and churches and organizations all across the United States. I wrote the course for the state of California for law enforcement chaplaincy, trained over 2,000 law enforcement chaplains in the state. And I am now serving in the Houston Police Department and being on board also with Montgomery County Sheriff's, working with some of the people that are up here, also within the Montgomery County area. So what I want to do is to kind of go over a little of the agenda for you right now. I'm going to talk to you about how chaplaincy can be used to provide community impact. And then we're going to go into the issue of suicide. The statistics and things that I'm going to show you is on a national basis and is from the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. So I'll give you the links, and everybody that's here, you have the handout of all the slides so you can take notes if you choose to. For those of you that are online that registered, and for those of you that don't know, Grace teaches in 36 countries in over 7 languages. So this is considered one endpoint. We can have 100 of these. So if you have registered and you're online and you have questions, we will have a Q&A session later. What you'll do is you'll hold your space bar down. It's push to talk. So you push the space bar down to ask your question, release it to hear your answer. But until we get to the Q&A session, we have everybody muted. Once we get done, we're going to kind of divide up a local response. We have the privilege and honor of working with Cassidy Join for Hope. We're going to have Kim Hess, who's the founder of that. Her daughter Cassidy died by suicide by hanging and created a foundation that has created school-based and student-led teams in the school system. And we are rolling out, coming up here in the next couple of months, suicide prevention training to 15-year-olds and higher with a program called Sept. I'm a master trainer for Living Works, which has created the international standard for suicide intervention. It is what they do on the suicide hotline if you were to pick up the phone. That's a 2-day class called Assist, which is applied suicide intervention skills training. And our hope is to train the counselors, the teachers, and the parents, and as many of you as possible on how to be suicide first aiders and be ready, willing, and able to provide suicide first aid and not miss, dismiss, or avoid the issue. There is a huge stigma around suicide that we have to even be able to say the word. Some of us can't get the word out of our mouth. So we want to educate in order to raise up so all of us are trained so that when we do see something, we say something and we do something. So Kim's going to talk about the youth from education. And then I also have the privilege of working with Bruce Stewart. Bruce is the president of the Stronger Alliance. There's a movie that just came out called We Are Stronger. It's dealing with post-traumatic stress injury with military veterans that are coming back into the country. And that particular issue with post-traumatic stress injury could potentially also lead to suicide. So we're going to have him talk about that. We're then going to have Judge Wayne Mack and Constable Gable from Precinct 3 and Precinct 1, and potentially Deputy or Constable Cash. Sorry, I'm still learning Texas. Talk with you about the mental health issues within the community from a law enforcement perspective. And then we have Tim Moyed, who is the Greater Houston Chapter Chair for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And then you might recognize Bill Prasad. He's the Director of Outpatient for Woodland Springs Hospital and also the mental health expert for KHOU Channel 11. And then we have Susie Cohen here also on the end that will be from Intercare Hospital. She's the Community Education Director. So that will be the agenda tonight. We're going to try to get through me. I have a couple of slides, and if I'm not done by 6:30, I'm stopping because these people are more important for you to listen to than my statistics, which you have on your slide. And if you have registered, we're going to be sending the slides out to you after this is over as well, so that you have that. So does that clarify everything? Okay. Would anybody object to me opening up a benediction prayer? Is that okay? Thank you. Father, we do come before you and we thank you so much for your great love and great mercies for us. Lord, this is such an important issue to bring out in from the darkness into the light. And I thank you for each person that's here and each person that's watching virtually. Father, we ask that you use us as your hands and feet to love one another and to be able to reach out to one another that are in crisis, that are in deep darkness, Father, and to shed your light upon this situation so that lives may be saved. Thank you for this evening. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you. So just really quick, I want to talk with you about a chaplain and what chaplaincy is about. Chaplaincy is kind of a bridge ministry, and it's the bridge between the sacred and the secular. And what a chaplain does is it meets a person in the midst of a crisis when they're going into what I call the pit of darkness. And what our goal is to be able to quickly assess what their normal might be so that we can help them out of the pit into a new normal because they have to deal with the crisis and learn how to deal with that. So we work in a triad of care that works with mental health, peer support, and chaplains working as a team. When somebody goes into this pit, they're trying to make sense of what just happened to them. By definition, a crisis isn't necessarily an incident. A critical incident for somebody is when they're overwhelmed and they're not able to function or to cope any longer. And what the chaplain does is they assess that stressor, if you will, and how deep they are in the pit, and use an intervention called crisis intervention. And there's a number of different things that we're able to do to deal with one person as one-on-one, or whether it's a group type of intervention. Suicide is a specific type of one-on-one intervention. There's a specific skill and process that we take people through in order to connect with them, to understand what's going on in order to assist them towards living. And that's what the 2-day class of assist is about. But when we first come on people, we do what's called crisis intervention. We teach about 13 different crisis intervention courses, mental health first aid classes for both adults, youth, as well as public safety, and a myriad of different gatekeeper trainings for suicide, ranging from QPR to the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation to Living Works, which provides the assist training. So what our organization has done is we've taken all of that training that we do, we've actually embedded it in a master's degree program here, which I'm the director of. So when people graduate from Grace School of Theology with a degree in chaplaincy, not only have they gotten the theological understanding from Grace, but they've also gotten a secular skill set to deal with real life issues that they're going to face. When I got my master's of divinity at Talbot at Biola University, I was never taught any of this. I wasn't taught about somebody who may have domestic violence or somebody involved with human trafficking or somebody with substance abuse. But from a pastoral perspective, it's something that you deal with inside the church. So I think there's more that we could be doing in partnership with people like yourself to take the church out of the building basically and be the church and deal with these issues. That's what our mission has been for over a decade now. So with that, chaplaincy can be a bridge between the sacred and the secular. Sorry about that. It's also a bridge between care and mission. So that basically gives us 4 quadrants that we're able to operate in. When we are in a secular environment, we fall under something called Lemon versus Kurtzman, which is a 3-pronged test. We have to have a secular purpose. We provide that purpose to everyone, even if there's not the person who has no faith, it doesn't matter, right? Everybody. And there's no entanglement between us and the government. And as long as we do those 3 things, there isn't any issue about separation of church and state, which sometimes comes up a lot when we bring the term chaplain up, because most of the times people think about chaplain as being like military chaplain or hospital chaplain, but to have a chaplain outside the community people just aren't used to doing that. So our secular purpose in the community is crisis interventions, counseling, it's mediation, it might be arbitration, or any host of a number of things to support the mission of the organization that we are working under and for. So that's what we're about. So that's all I'm going to say about chaplaincy. So let's talk about the issue tonight, suicide. Again, this information, the scope, the warning sign, the risk factors, and effective prevention is taken from the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. And we're going to look at suicide deaths in the United States. So when we look at the comparison between suicide and homicide, you can see that there are, on a rate per 100,000 rather, suicide is up about 14 per 100,000 as far as the latest statistics in 2016 compared to homicide. And it's been going up steadily. When we look at by sex, you can see that males have a higher rate of suicide than females. Why do you think that that might be the case? Why would males be higher than females?
They're less likely to talk about their problem.
Less likely to talk about their problems. What else?
The means that they use.
The means that they use generally are more lethal, right? One of the things that you might want to think in the back of your head or write down is we have something called a lethal triad. If you have a mental illness, such as depression, alcohol, and lethal means, when you see that combination of those three things, you ought to have warning signs going off and bells ringing, okay? When we look at the rate for from 2000 to 2016, the rate increased from 10.43 to 13.92 per 100,000. For men, it went from 17.11 to 21.83, and among females, it went from 3.99 to 6.24. Okay, so even though it's low, it's still going up. I think when we look at military veterans too, I think the rate for women warriors when they come back, I think we're going to see an escalation occur with our military veterans that are women coming back. When we look at the geographical distribution based upon the county levels, it's generally higher in the western states and in rural areas. Does anybody have any guess why that might be the case?
No services.
Access to care. Okay, it's more limited in the rural areas. So it's harder to get the care that people need to get. When we look at suicide by age, we can see that it's increasing by most age groups. Now, this is kind of hard to see, but the green line that's on the top, that's ages 45 to 64. The gold line, which is the second highest line, is 65 and up. The red line is 25 to 44, and the blue line is 15 to 24. And this is from 2000 to 2016, and it's the rate per 100,000 people. So everybody, it's going up for all age groups. When we look at the causes of death, now I would have preferred to have had this as a rate per 100,000 rather than a ranking, because the rate per 100,000 statistically shows more than the number that happens. But you can see from ages 10 to 34, suicide is ranked as the second highest cause of death for those age groups. Think about that. From ages 10 to 34, it's the second highest cause. What's above this is unintentional injury. And then below that, we start to go into other things, homicides, neoplasms, and things of that nature. When we look at thoughts and attempts, for every suicide death, there are approximately 3 hospitalizations for 1 suicide attempt. There are 9 emergency department visits, and there are 27 attempts that do not result in hospitalization or emergency department visits. So if we start at the top and we look at the number of people affected by suicides aged 18 or older, and this is from 2014, there's about 41,429 deaths per year. When we start to look at hospitalizations, it jumps up to 111,000. Emergency department visits, 375. And then when we look at the attempts, there are 1.1 million attempts every year in suicide. We look at military veterans that will be talked about in a little bit. There's 22 per day. When I look at nationally, as far as I looked earlier today, I think it may have just changed actually since I looked at it this morning. We have had 98 line of duty deaths nationally in law enforcement this year. We were at 89 suicides for the year. And I believe it just went to 90. And that's from the course of this morning to this evening.
Wow.
It is huge. 36% of people who make a suicide plan go on to make a suicidal attempt. 23% of people who attempt suicide do not engage in any planning. When you look at this chart, we have 9.8 million adults had serious thoughts of suicide. 2.8 million made suicide plans. 1 million made plans and attempted. 0.3 million made no plans and attempted. And 1.3 million total attempted suicide. This is a 2016 study, ages 18 and higher. I would offer you to consider that suicide is a public health issue that needs to be addressed. When we look at the rates of suicide, they are declining with age, but the rates generally will increase with age. So the yellow that you see here are suicidal thoughts versus suicide attempts. So, and this is based upon a percentage. So you can look at the group of 18 to 25, 8.8% of youth that age, based on this study by the CDC, had thoughts of it, and 1.8% attempted. Okay, so think about having a classroom of 100 students, and out of 100 students, 2 of them have attempted suicide. When we look at thoughts, again, in the past among adults, you can look at the different age groups. You can see the sex is kind of the same. But when you look at 18 to 25, it's percent with suicidal thoughts in the past year. 8.8% of our youth are having thoughts of suicide. When we look at high school students reporting suicide, ideation means having thoughts of it. So a person with thoughts of suicide, considering and planning on female high school students, are nearly double that of male high school students. And suicide thoughts and attempts are higher among high school students than among adults in general, although deaths are lower in adolescents than among adults. And I would wager that the reason is that their thinking process hasn't gotten them to the point that they're able to put a plan together cogently enough to be able to execute it fully, and or have access or utilize more lethal means, if you will. That would be the reasoning behind that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How is the data being gathered in terms of trying to figure out who's thinking about it and who's not?
This is a study through the CDC, so the references on there would be available on the CDC's website.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Women are at risk for a higher suicidal ideation attempt and medically treated attempts than men. However, men die at a higher rate than women. Again, I believe it's because they're using more lethal means for doing that. So when we look at the means, the most common means of suicide in the United States is firearms. And it's followed by suffocation and then by poisoning. 57% of suicides among males involve a firearm. I kind of already saw that. And among females, the means of suicide, leading means, is poisoning. And this includes both drug and non-prescription poisoning as well. And this is kind of the same thing, just shown a different way. When we look at racial and ethnic differences, in 2016, the rate of suicide among American Indians, Alaskan Natives was 21.39 per 100,000, and among whites, it was 18.15. Suicide rate around Asian Pacific Islanders was 7. The rate with blacks was 6.3, and Hispanics was also 6.3. And it's kind of saying the same thing. So when we look at youth suicide, It's a third leading cause of death among 15 to 24 years old. In 1999, more teenagers and young adults died from suicide than cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, and chronic lung disease combined. This is a list of some of the risk factors that you look for: depression, anxiety, disruptive behavior, substance use, any type of family disruption or lack of family support, increased availability to firearms. The statistic, I believe, is they're 5 times more likely that there is a firearm if you don't protect it, like firearm trigger guards and stuff like that. If there was any previous attempt that they may have had, or any history in their family for that. Also, there it is. So according to the study from Rickard Hemwire, there's a 5-fold increase in suicide in homes with kids that have a gun in their house because they didn't protect the gun properly from the children. So having it locked, having a trigger guard, the storage of the gun is what's important. Okay. There was a youth suicide study, National Household in 2000, that was based on 72,000 aged 12 and older, plus 25,000 aged 14 to 17. And it estimated that 3 million youths were at risk for suicide. 37% actually attempted. The risk was similar whatever the ethnicity was. And illicit drug and other marijuana were 3 times, if they used it, were 3 times more likely to be at risk than youths who did not. Okay. And when we look at warning signs, these are some of the things to look out for. Change in school attendance and or performance, failure to complete assignments, taking or joking about suicide or death, increased risk-taking behaviors, substance abuse, wide mood springs, impulsive behaviors, changes in appearance or personal care, relationships, or preoccupation with death or suicide. When we get into the Safe Talk class, we start to talk about the invitations that they're sending out. They're getting closed off, they're withdrawing, they feel the pain and the pressure that's on them, that they can't bear it, and that the only way to take care of it is for them to take their lives and attempt a suicide. And nobody around them is seeing it because it's being missed, dismissed, or avoided. So what we want to do is to make sure that we become aware of the symptoms and that we don't miss, dismiss, and avoid it. And then when we see it, we say something about it. And we ask the question, are you thinking, based upon your life situations, based upon what you're telling me, what I'm seeing, and what I'm hearing, sometimes people are considering suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? That's a tough question to ask. Because the fear is, what happens if they say yes? What do I do next? Well, education can help you and teach you what to do next. And that's what we want to do out here in the community, is get that education out so that you can ask the question and know exactly how to do that. The Safe Talk class that we're going to start to do inside the school groups with Kim and Cassidy Joint for Hope is going to teach the kids to not miss, dismiss, and avoid it, to ask the question and know how to talk to the person, to take the person to somebody who can help them. That's all Safe Talk is about. Okay? And I think all of us ought to at least have that in a minimum level of training. Just out of curiosity, how many people here have ever taken CPR training? Okay, can you keep your hands up, please? How many of you have ever administered CPR? Okay, there's a few. So almost every hand in this class, and you can put your hands down, thank you. Every hand in this class went up. You were all trained in CPR, but only a handful of people have actually given CPR. So here's my question. Why did you take CPR training? Just in case, right? Well, what we want you to do is to take suicide first aid training, just in case. Same type of principle, okay? At a minimum, we believe that that should be Safe Talk. It's about a 4-hour class, okay? That will equip you to be able not to miss, dismiss, or avoid the issue and learn the skill of how do you ask the question talk to somebody, and then get them to the care that they need. We're going to have a whole team of people down here that can talk with you about what the resources are that are in this community. They're a wonderful community resource team. The other issue is some of you may go on and say, you know, how many of you have taken a first aid, CPR, and AED class? So you've gone a little bit further than just CPR, okay? Basic life support for healthcare professionals, the base level. So some of you have actually learned how to do that type of work. That's what the assist class is about. It's how do you learn how to do the actual intervention. So when somebody talks to somebody and is able to take them to somebody to help them, the assist class teaches you what to do with them once you start to talk with that person to start to pull out. And sometimes you're able to help them and sometimes you're not. And then you continue to refer them to the community resources and mental health department. But the work that we do in the field is kind of like a paramedic in the field. We're going to do the arterial bleed, stop it, but we're not going to do the surgery. So let's learn how to stop the bleeding and transport them to people that can do the surgery. Does that make sense? Okay. So these things, we go more fully into the classroom. So with that, I'm going to stop there. And what I'd like to do now is I'm going to bring up Kim Hess, and she is the founder of Cassidy Join for Hope. And for about the next 15 minutes, she's going to talk with you about what's going on with her organization and what we're hoping to accomplish within our community. So if we can welcome Kim up to the stage.
Good evening. My name is Kim Hess, and I am the founder and president of the Cassidy Join for Hope Foundation. Unfortunately, my daughter Cassidy is part of these statistics. Because 5 days before Christmas 2015, we lost Cassidy to suicide. There were no warning signs. Sometimes there aren't warning signs, or at least none that we noticed. And that day came as a complete shock to our family. Cassidy wasn't depressed. She wasn't being bullied. She didn't have any history of mental illness. In fact, she was just the opposite. She was a happy, funny, silly, fun-loving, free-spirited 16-year-old that had her whole life to live for. She was a varsity cheerleader at College Park High School. She had a great group of friends that loved her and supported her unconditionally. She had a loving and supporting family that supported her and loved her unconditionally, and she knew it. She was plugged into her youth group at church, yet she didn't reach out to one of these people when she needed us the most. She kept silent that day. And silence is what ultimately took her life. Cassidy had support. She had people that loved her, and she didn't reach out. Our community lost 6 students to suicide that year. It was a devastating year. And unfortunately, there was one more right after Cassidy before the end of the year. So we recognized that this is truly a silent epidemic, and we had to do something about it. After going through the devastation and the pain, trying to pick the pieces back up, we decided we have to do more. So we created the Cassidy Join for Hope Foundation in 2016 with our mission to prevent teen suicide. That summer, I invited Cassidy's best friends to brainstorm with me all summer about what can we do as teens and as parents to prevent this? Because we knew that the kids had to be part of the solution. I could sit there and think all day what I think the problem is, but it's got to come from them. So we brainstormed all summer, and we found some great ways to address the issue on a team level and to prevent it in their schools. We were blessed enough to get approval from our principal at College Park High School and the counselors to start a student-led organization in the school to focus on teen suicide prevention, and that hadn't been done before. They did a great job that year of breaking the silence inside the school walls and removing the stigma of suicide. We talked about it. It wasn't easy, but we talked about it. We had to talk about it, and they knew it. They were not going to lose another one of their friends. We brought in speakers. We spoke at school and in churches. We had got the community involved in our movement with Purple Out games. how they have pink out games in October for breast cancer awareness. Well, we had purple out games. Purple is one of the colors for suicide prevention. So we had the cheerleaders, football players, drill team, color guard, everyone out there decked out in purple. And we had a message read before the game and during halftime about what this means, how we're coming together as a community to do something about this. And then we had a community-wide kickball tournament, Kickfest, which is the kids' idea, and brought our community together to, again, spread the awareness and to raise money and to speak out about it. It was a great event. So this year, our foundation is providing a curriculum for our Going for Hope clubs, in which, by the way, we have 5 clubs now. Started out at College Park High School. We now have Oak Ridge, Concordia Lutheran Private School, Lone Star College, and Leander in Rouse High School in Leander, Texas, or just close to Austin. And then another school from Austin just contacted us, and they're ready to get going also. We're trying to spread this throughout our community and other communities. So it's, and the kids are doing a great job. But we're also giving them, providing them with a curriculum every month to focus on different aspects of mental health, to spread the messages of hope and kindness as well. So we're very excited this year to be partnering with the Grace School of Theology and Care Force to go a step further. We've broken the silence. Now we have to go further, and we have to get these kids and sponsors and educators trained in this wonderful program on the suicide first aid, because we have to be the eyes and ears for each other. These kids, these teens have to be the eyes and ears for each other. They have to know the signs to look for and know what to do once they know that one of their friends is in trouble. So through the Safe Talk and Assist training programs, our foundation is prepared to pay for all the clubs, kids, sponsors, and any counselors, educators that want to partake in this program. We're prepared to pay for that. Our goal is to be a mentally health-friendly school with mentally health literacy embedded into the high school curriculum. Mental health is a part of everyday life without stigma. All teachers become mental health advocates. That's our goal. Kids have so many pressures in school these days. They feel alone. They feel like they're the only ones going through these pressures. And they feel that suicide is their only way out because they just can't see past that situation. I've been asked to speak at different schools and churches, all the way from junior high up to university level, and even adults in our community. Every time I speak, and it doesn't matter what age of the audience, without a doubt, every time people come up to me with tears in their eyes, thanking me first for speaking on this topic, but also then they're able to share their stories. Everyone seems to have a story, and everyone seems to be touched by suicide in one way or the other. So when I was talking with some junior high girls, these were cheerleaders and drill team girls, beautiful, 13, 14, impressionable girls, come up to me after I'm speaking with tears in their eyes, telling me their problems, what they've been dealing with, what they were thinking of doing, how they have been hurting themselves. And they hadn't told anybody. They haven't told their mom, their dad, they haven't told their teacher, they haven't told their friends. But yet they told me that day just because they needed to, and they knew that they were reaching for help. We can just help these kids by opening the conversations. They can help each other too. We also want to focus on creating a suicide-safe app for our community. That will help identify the warning signs as well as the do's and don'ts to help the person who's in trouble, share local resources, national resources, and links to important suicide prevention websites. And also with some push notifications to notify you about community events like this. But we're going to get our kids involved in this app because, again, the kids are the ones that are going to be using the app, and they need to be part of the solution and the design of it. So again, we're just doing our best to save our kids. It's tough being a kid today. It's tough being a parent, but it's tough being a kid. And they got to know that they are not alone. They have a whole community that supports and loves them, and we can help them. 10 million people are suffering without the proper mental health care, and we have to stop ignoring each other's pain. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can save lives. Thank you.
So, Kim, if people want to get in contact with you or what you're doing, how do they connect with you?
Go to our website, CassidyJoinForHope.com. And also want to mention one last time, September 15th is our kickball tournament. It's a community-wide kickball tournament to spread the awareness. It's junior high, ages all the way up to adult, but registration closes this week. So we would love for y'all to get your kids involved, y'all get involved, get a team together. We will have speakers midway through the tournament as well, and we'll have resource tables there. So we encourage y'all to participate in this.
Thank you. So CassidyJoinForHope.com.
And I have some flyers out there at the table where you check in if they want to grab one on the way out.
Sure. And for those of you that are online, we will also be sending the flyers out to you electronically as well with the handout for tonight if you register for the class. And we're streaming this on Facebook Live also. So if you're on Facebook Live, you can connect at gsot.edu and then make a request to be able to have the material sent to you if you're watching on Facebook as well. Also, if you're on Facebook and you got some questions, we'll try our best to get to them. Sorry, we're not able to have interaction with you at this point. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to bring up both Bruce Stewart and General Hummer combined, if you guys don't mind, to talk with you about, Lieutenant General Hummer, to talk to you about military and post-traumatic stress injury and the issues of suicide that's happening here in our community.
All right, good evening. How's everybody? So, you know, as Ken said, we're seeing 22 suicides a day in the veteran community. The military has put an awful lot of effort into this. At the highest level, DOD level, they have an undersecretary that works specifically for General Mattis or Secretary Mattis now. That's focused on this. There's no one answer to it. There's no one answer to PTS. There's a lot of different therapies that are out there that can be used. Which I'm not sure if we're going to get into some of those or not. One of the things that I did, I was in command of a organization, Marine Forces Reserve, and it's almost 50,000 drilling reservists all around the country, and a total of 100,000 with those that are non-drilling, but still have time to do, but they're in the civilian sector, still have time on their contract. And what we came up with, you know, not it's a total solution, was a culture of responsible choices, and it covers more than just suicide. It's choices. We all, at all levels, have to make choices. So how do we influence those good choices and those bad choices? Every week I would have a operations update and find out what the Marines were doing, those 100,000 Marines were doing around the world. Some of them were in Iraq, some of them were in Afghanistan, some of them were in Africa, some of them were in the Pacific. They were in the Philippines and Thailand, a lot of them doing counter-terrorist operations, and a lot of them were in the States. A lot of them were drilling reservists, which means once a month they would go to a drill center and do their drill over the weekend. So their support was really kind of their home, their church, their schools, not necessarily the Marine Corps. Those on active duty then became their support function was actually the active duty service. Every week I would get a brief on how we were doing across a lot of different categories. accidents, aviation accidents, ground accidents, things like that. But the top one was suicides. How are we doing on suicides? So in this brief, for all the people that were involved in the staff that were there, they would see what was important to the commander. And we actually were able to decrease over the 2 years I was there the number of suicides. Not by much, and sometimes you just have natural statistics, flow of statistics in there. But it's what the leadership is interested in. And it's the same for all the folks that are here. The more we're interested in something, the more we can reach out and touch things, the more we can, have events like Kim doing the things that she's doing in the aftermath of her tragedy. We bring folks together and hopefully can make a difference. One of the things in the overall Marine Corps, and I think it was also the same in the other services, if you had a suicide, you had 24 hours, of course you reported it within minutes, but then you had a certain list of things that you were reporting within 24 hours. Within a week, you had to come back with what was called a 7-day or an 8-day report. And it peeled back all those kind of questions. Who was this individual? Got down into their life, who their friends were, did they drink a lot, were they using drugs, et cetera, et cetera. Sadly, one of the things we came about was we found out that in some cases, in many cases, we learned more about our Marines after they were dead than when they were alive. And it goes to the leadership. It goes to embracing folks, bringing them in close, finding out who they are, what they want to be, what they want to have, what they want to do, and then be looking for these kind of signs where their behavior changes, their friends change. We also had not that I'm throwing out a whole bunch of solutions, we had a buddy concept. Everyone had a buddy. No matter who it was, I had a buddy. My executive officer was my buddy, and those buddies had to know where they were. I kidded and told them, okay, if one of you goes to Disneyland, and this was out at Camp Pendleton, if one of you goes to Disneyland, you have to buy a ticket for your buddy also. That's not the case, but that'd probably be a good idea. But your buddy needs to know where you are, when you're coming back, those kind of things. And there's applications in combat too, which I won't talk about here necessarily. But so it's that you start with that team effort. So one of the things that Kim said was a lot of these students feel alone, right? And people feel alone. A lot of Vietnam veterans are out there. They're still feeling alone. And if you look at these statistics specific to veterans groups, it's a higher rate in the Vietnam veterans groups, and those guys are my age. So these are a couple things that have done out there, but the DoD has really leaned into this. But after all that, there's no specific answers. There's nothing you can peg that on, which means we all just have to continue to learn. We have to try and get better at this. We have to try and peel it back. We have to know what's going on behind the eyeballs of our service people, of our veterans, of our friends, of our family, of our children, so that when we see those kind of changes, potentially it may come to that question: are you or have you been thinking of harming yourself? Is that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'm going to do a bit of a segue from what Kim shared to veterans to law enforcement. And the reason is because I do work with veterans. I'm also helping Kim, and I work as a volunteer chaplain with Houston Police Department at their headquarters, and also with Constable Ryan Gable, which is here in Montgomery County. Why is it important for youth to understand how to deal with suicide? I wanted to talk about that very quickly. And the reason is we had a gentleman, he's an Army veteran. His name is Kenneth Coon. He's part of our organizations. And he himself had thought of suicide. And it was his teenage son that approached him and said, "Dad, are you having thoughts of suicide?" I'm a father. Some of you are parents. You can imagine how that conversation went for your own child to call you out and say, "Hey, what's going on in your mind up there?" Well, fortunately, it was a good enough call out. That gentleman, Kenneth Kuhn, has gone on, and I know personally, just last year alone, saved 220 other veterans and law enforcement officers from suicide. All because one teenager knew how to discuss suicide and how to talk to them about it. So what Kim is talking about is not just for teenagers, it's for everybody. It affects our community. As far as veterans go, the general was actually quite humble because he didn't even mention his organisation, which is Combined Arms, so I'll give you a free plug. That's down in Houston, and hopefully General will bring one up here.
Yeah,
Please.
That's the plan,
Please.
I hope. And what they do is they have a place where veterans can go and get assessed. So for mental health, for job situation, for finances, for volunteering, for all of those things. And so that's something hopefully here in Montgomery County we will do. Up here we are blessed. We have people who support our veterans. What you may not know, we have 44,000 veterans in Montgomery County alone. That number is increasing. And we are also seeing a high rate of not just suicides, but homelessness as well, which leads to hopelessness, which leads to suicides. Me and myself just last weekend had 2 different veterans who we had to house because they didn't have a place to stay. And some of our worries, and I must make it clear too, I'm not a veteran. And that's important as well because often we think, well, veterans is a separate group. I don't know veterans. I'm not a veteran. How will I ever integrate with veterans? Can I tell you, they're just like everybody else in that they want to know that somebody cares. And that doesn't require being a veteran. That requires being a good person and taking the time to listen and letting them know that you appreciate their service and that what they've done is honorable and what they've done is worthy. And we get freedom, and I don't want to rant, but the reality is we get to do stuff like this because of them. So, just letting them know that you appreciate that's part of building that community, building that bridge with veterans. Here in Montgomery County, we're very fortunate. We have programs one is called Mighty Oaks. We've had blanket approval from the Marine Corps. We've had over 2,000 veterans go through. We've had 0 suicides. I was fortunate enough to be an instructor, still a mentor with them, and that's all paid for. But here specifically, I have my friend Gary Buckaloo sitting in the corner there. He has Calvary Still Ministries, and for those of you who don't know, they have quite incredible programs. And I just want to give you some of these ideas so that you know some of the solutions that are available to us here. In that, we have a gentleman called Woody. It's a part of the Grace program. And if they go through the VA, if a veteran goes through the VA, it's usually 6 months, and correct me if I'm wrong, General, 6 months, you get an appointment, then maybe another 6 months before they actually get to see somebody. Well, if I've had a fight with my wife the night before, or, I've had a bad incident and I need to see somebody the next day, I don't have 6 months. And so Gary's providing a service where they'll have 10 sessions and they are able to go and see somebody the very next day to help them deal with the mental health side of things as well. He also has a program called Going Deeper, which is part of our book. If you've seen our movie, I'm blessed to be the pastor for this movie. We're doing an online study as well. They're doing a study at their church. So that helps unpack some of the issues that they have coming home. And so far we've been highly successful with that, but we've also done an online study that these gentlemen and ladies who are in remote areas and rural areas where they don't have access to the resources that we have here in Montgomery County can go online and they can get help that way as well. So there are a lot of things that are available. And as the General said, there's no one surefire solution other than the community coming together and being a Christian. Obviously, I believe Christ is the answer, but we have to still come together and support these veterans. It goes with law enforcement as well. If you don't mind, I'll just talk quickly about that real quickly. I know they're going to talk about it, but we have 22 veterans, but what people don't know, in law enforcement and first responders, one dies in the line of duty every 54 hours. One dies by suicide every 17. We're losing 2.5 first responders for every one that dies in the line of duty. Unfortunately, one of our mutual friends contacted us over the weekend, and a retired captain had died by suicide as well. So it's an issue. And why is this connected with veterans as well? Because a lot of our veterans, when they get out, go into law enforcement, they go into firemen, they go into EMTs, because it's in their DNA to help and serve and rescue. That's who they are. And so one of the things I would encourage you to tell our veterans, and this is one of the things we do, we don't treat them as victims. We don't treat them as victims. We treat them as warriors. And we teach them, listen, now you're just in a different fight. You're fighting for your marriage. You're fighting for your children. You're fighting for your community. And you're fighting for the legacy that you want to leave behind. And how can you do that? And so that's something that we make a priority, and giving them hope, and then coming alongside them and helping them through that. And yeah, so.
Thank you for that. Why don't you talk a little bit about Stronger Alliance also?
So the Stronger Alliance, we had a movie. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I'll give it a free plug. It's called We Are Stronger.
Great movie.
Great thing. It's about a veteran coming home with post-traumatic stress, and through that, we didn't want to just talk about the issue. We wanted to actually address the issue. So we developed the Stronger Alliance, in which I'm privileged to be the director for, and that is a list of organizations across the nation that are Christ-centered, that help with post-traumatic stress, whether it be for a veteran, first responder, sexual abuse, burn victims, whatever it may be. So we have those resources available. Nearly all of them are free. We have groups here, for example, Forever Faithful Ranch, that helps with sexually abused kids. And it is making a difference. I don't know if I can share. Can I share one? Okay, because I'm very careful about. So we had a girl who was 12 years old. Unfortunately, had been raped by her next-door neighbor, who'd also raped his own stepdaughter. And she was able to go to this program, and she was suicidal. And we were able to sponsor her to do this program. And we got a letter from her mum and from her saying, I had no hope, and now I have hope. And this is what I want to do. And that's here in Montgomery County. And so what we're really trying to do, along with Ken, Kim, the others here, is build a community that, hey, we're going to help each other. We're going to support each other. We're going to encourage each other. We're going to have chaplains that we can raise up in each of these communities that can respond to these crises and really help develop our resources, know what resources are available, and then point them in the right direction.
And that's a great segue to Judge Mack. Our organization has and wants to work in the community to help raise up crisis response teams and chaplains and plug them into things that are already present. And Judge Mack has a wonderful program that's already in the community where he works at, and we'll talk about that as well.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Thank you very much, and what a distinguished group that we have up here. And Kim and Judd, I just admire your bravery and what you've done with your tragedy and been such a blessing. There's no telling how many lives the people up at this right ahead of this table have saved and interceded on. As Justice of the Peace, and there are 254 counties in Texas. Of them 254 counties, only 13 of those counties have medical examiner's offices. So in addition to my judicial responsibilities, I'm also the coroner. And so I've been in office 1,578 days today, but who's counting? But in that 1,578 days, I've done over 1,200 inquests. In Montgomery County, since 2011, we had 45 suicides, and we've had a 50% increase in the last 7-8 years on the number of suicides that we have. Just since 2017 to date, well, to July 31st, we've had 147 suicides in our county. In the last 3 weeks, I think I've been on 6 or 7 suicides just in the last 3 weeks. So we talk about what we can do. One of the things that we can do is what we're doing right here tonight, is pull down the veil and discuss suicide. We have got to, as a community, as a culture, as a nation, we've got to get to the point where it's okay to say I'm not okay. We've got to get there. 10 years ago, I was given a diagnosis of no cure, no remission. I had non-Hodgkin's follicular lymphoma, went into the doctor for a kidney stone, and found out I had an incurable cancer. And so my family, the community, my people I work with, all rallied around me. And thank the Lord, on about 3 years later, they told me I was in remission. And then on August the 7th, 2017, doctor comes in shaking his head, holding my folder. And when you're at MD Anderson and the doctor comes in shaking his head, that's an oh God moment. And he said, I can't explain it, but you're what we call cured. Now, if 10 years ago, I would have walked into the same room that had all these people in it when I announced that I had this incurable cancer, and I would appreciate their prayers. If that same room, I would have walked in and said, I'm bipolar, I'm schizophrenic, I'm depressed, I'm thinking about killing myself, what would have been the community response? And so the question I pose to you and everybody here today and those watching online is, how can we fix that? Well, we can fix that by having these conversations. I'm so thankful to Grace for facilitating this, and everyone that's here. We also have Constable Gable, who's going to be speaking here momentarily. We also have Constable Cash, who his department is over the mental health division, law enforcement, mental health for Montgomery County. They respond. They have a crisis intervention team, and they work very closely with all law enforcement agencies. Our county commissioners have recognized the need for mental health, and in Texas, our largest mental health facilities are our county jails. And that's got to change. That's got to change. And I'm so thankful that our commissioners court and our sheriff and our constables and all of them are recognizing that. But we've got to pull down the veil. Kim talked about one of the first events her organization had was down here at the Woodlands United Methodist Church. And Kim, what do we have? Almost 2,000 people there. And in this very powerful synergy full of room, just a few months after her beautiful daughter had taken her life, there were all these people there and all these young people there, and there was so much synergy in the room. And very powerful speaker, a gentleman that attempted suicide, and now, yes, and it was very powerful. But after that meeting and our community response, one of a very affluent member of our community, and that was very a part of the media in our region, come up to me and said, Judge, this is a great event, and I'm so glad that we had this, but I'm worried to do a story about this because I'm afraid people are going to copycat what Cassidy's done. Well, that is the worst thing you can do, is not talk about this. And of all of the more suicides that I want to enumerate in my mind, and the things, and I've seen death in every form or fashion. All them cases, Ken, only 2 families have been shocked that it happened. Only 2. All the other families weren't thinking of if it was going to happen. In their mind, it was when it was going to happen. Because people talked about it, and they mentioned there was a suicide attempts, and people with mental health issues. It's okay to say I'm a diabetic and I got to take my insulin, but it's not okay to step out of the room and say, hey, I need to take my mental health medicine. It's not socially acceptable. And the largest organ in our body is our brain that controls every other function of our body. But yet there's a stigma that goes with saying, I need help. something to help me. And I'm very devout in my faith. In fact, I'm being sued by atheists, so that's, I mean, every Christian's dream. I'm sued by atheists in federal court. And so, and there's a faith component to this, and all the professionals will talk about behavior modification. A lot of it comes through people being in touch with their personal faith and so forth, and being able to heal and be able to go through that process. But we've got to do what we're doing here today. And on a local level, I'm going to let Constable Ryan here. I could talk all day about this subject because I'm very passionate about pulling down that veil. And thank you again, Ken, for facilitating this.
Good evening. Thank you all for having us again. I was telling Bruce earlier that if I was a judge, I would have a holster for my gavel. But again, coming here tonight to be able to speak to you all about what we do on a law enforcement level every day is something that we certainly want to get out to our community. Tonight I want to speak towards our parents because one of the issues we face just about daily is we have a computer crimes division, and they focus on child predators. They focus on the people that are looking to do harm to our kiddos. And so one of the things that we see common that relates to children doing things to themselves is through cyberbullying. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when I went to school, if you were going to be bullied in school, you were bullied from, when you got to school and you left. And it wasn't a 24-hour cycle like it is today through our social media sites and the presence of our followers that our children have on social media and things of that nature. So I want to reach out and make sure through you guys as parents are cautious with your children's social media accounts and your own as well, because as you do things on social media, you have people that are following you that you probably don't know who they are, and some could have fake accounts, and we see that daily as well. But through cyberbullying, people will take over one's social media accounts. And so you may have a child out there that has pictures and friends, and they've allowed somebody in that is able to gather those pictures and friends. And they extort our children by talking to them in a way that if you don't provide certain things, we're going to provide these pictures to your friends and your teachers and, your peers. And so our children do things for these predators, and they're good at what they do. And they are in all age groups, from children themselves that are just predators by nature. We had a young man, he was a juvenile. He had thousands and thousands of photos on various computer devices, tablets, a cell phone. We ended up arresting him a second time from a church camp where he was communicating with several young girls. We had a 12-year-old in Arizona that did a video indicating she was going to commit suicide with a firearm. And we had police respond in Arizona, and we were able to protect her in all regards. So this is a juvenile that has the ability to coerce our children out there to provide certain things, to turn over sexual photos and extort our kids through that. I speak on this to our children, our parents, quite often, and I speak of a young lady named Amanda Todd, who she was 15 when she committed suicide, and an adult had done the same thing, bullied her through her social media, talked her into providing certain explicit photos that this individual shared with other peers, principals, school teachers, things that she had on her Facebook, which led to her committing suicide. And before that, she had changed a number of schools. And so we want to make sure that as parents we're evaluating our children's social media, that we sit down and audit the thousands of friends that they have on social media and to see who they know and who they don't and kind of weed those things out. So as the judge said, with a little bit of statistics, in 2017, we had 87 total suicides here in Montgomery County. And of that, ages 11 through 25, there were 17 through various methods. So it is something that is prevalent. It's something that we do see and deal with. It's one thing some more information I'd like to put out there is with these types of talks and being able to educate parents and such and educate our kiddos are coming forward and they're talking about their friends and they're putting things out there to their parents that they're seeing other kids doing to other kids in a bully type nature. But as a result of that, when our children bring us that information and our parents call law enforcement and we get involved, we want to make sure that the parents know that we need those cell phones. And depending upon what it takes to get the information out of your child's cell phone, or if we're directed to a family and we're going to take their stuff as evidence to dump their phones for the information, we also take over their social accounts so that we act as them. And the reason I tell you this is because it could take hours and it could take weeks, and our parents are providing their teens phones again during this time. The teens are getting back on their social media because us as parents are apt to tell them, yeah, get back on it without, putting our foot down and saying, no, you got to stay off of it, which takes our case and it just, it washes it out. We can't do anything. We also have parents that try and act as their child to gain information from these predators and other kids, which that also disregards what we can do in law enforcement and won't let us walk through with the case, because when we communicate with a predator, we know what to say, what to get out of them to create a criminal offense, whereas when a parent communicates with them and brings us that information, we're the affiant and we can't do anything with that if you're, I guess, interfering with that type of investigation. So please let us know if you're uncomfortable with any aspect of anything that you're seeing your children do. Let us get involved right away. And really, that's all I've got to say. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here tonight. Please follow us on Facebook or contact us through our website, mcco3.org. We can come out and talk to your kids, your family, your schools, your churches, any group that you're part of. Metadata is very important. If you're taking photos of yourself and you're putting them online, people that know how to obtain metadata can figure out exactly where you're at when you're doing it, things like that through GPS coordinates. So these are considerations for parents and people in here on how easy it is to find you and your kids at the mall taking selfies, things like that. So let us know how we could help. Thank you.
Is precinct 1 mcco1.org?
Sorry?
Precinct 1.
Your website.
Your website?
Yeah, please. We also have
mcco1.org.
a Constable Precinct 1 Facebook.
Constable Precinct 1 on Facebook. And Gary, could you give information about your church?
Yes, it's churchofthegoodsoldier.org.
Churchofthegoodsoldier.org.
And then CS-Ministries TX. So CS-Ministries plural TX.org.
And can you, your church is really unique in how it's been established. Could you just take a really quick moment to
Yes, well, the church stemmed from the ministry. What we were finding is that the guys that come from out of jail, I'm also the chaplain at Montgomery County Vet Father. And what we're finding is that when these guys come out, they're ready for that initial hookup for wanting to see what kind of counseling they can receive at no cost to them. But then after the counseling is done, that 12 weeks or 6 months, then they kind of fall off the face of the earth. And then, well, lo and behold, here you are again, back at Montgomery County. So we thought, how can we get the folks together at least once a week? Well, there's one meeting at church a week. And so that's what we we've done for our military guys, for our veterans, and for our first responders. We have Church of the Good Soldier that we meet on Saturday nights, so that folks can be there that are working, and for those that are having other that have other churches on Sundays, they can be there. That's all on the website, and there's a lot of guys that are in there that have either attempted or have been contemplating suicide. And when you get up there and you let them hear their testimony, it's so familiar because the isolation. And the key is as long as you don't feel like you're alone, it's a start. I can't tell you how many times the phone has rang. Hey, what are you about to do? What's going on with you right now? Well, you're the last call I got. I'm fixing to end it. Well, why don't we put the gun down and say a prayer together? Do you have any objections to that? And I've never had anybody say no.
Well, Gary, thank you so much, and that's a great segue because we want to talk about what the community resources are that are available. I'd like to have Kim, if you could start. Kim is the chair for the Greater Houston Area American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Kim Moyan.
Hey guys, my name is Kim Moyan, and I'm the chair for the Greater Houston Area Chapter Community Walk for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We do a walk, this is our 16th year for the Greater Houston Area. It's our, I believe, 8th year in the Woodlands. So a little bit personally about why I'm involved. It's been 8 years since I lost my mother to suicide. It's been about 20 seconds since I publicly admitted that in front of a group of people. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that. I was kind of working in the shadows for a long time and decided to get out and become less of a helper and more of a leader. So that's why I'm trying to be strong and stand up here and talk to all you guys about this. So basically, we do the walk, and it is to promote support, awareness, raise funds, and the funds are 80 cents on every dollar go back to the organization. So we cover research, education, advocacy, and support for those who have lost. Those are the main pillars of the organization. So that's nationally. Nationally has a bunch of programs. They have More Than Sad, Talk Saves Lives, Science Matter. These are all great programs that they can implement into our communities. All we have to do is ask. We raise the money. We get them to come out. So locally, our chapter, we're part of the Southeast Texas chapter, and we have 3 walks: Beaumont, Sugar Land, and the Greater Houston area. Our chapter, our Southeast chapter, is working on specific programs. One is getting More Than Sad actually implemented in all the Houston and Montgomery County schools, working with counselors and actually getting it in there. We could probably work a lot with Kim to do that as well. We are also doing firearms safety, and that's really important, as you talked about earlier. That is a tool that will get you results. And so what they're trying to do is safely train without bringing in the stigma of any sort of politics to it. It's really about training families who want to have them to be safe. And then there is a survivor outreach program, which I'll be working with coroners and law enforcement and hospitals, basically to get resources to people who have just recently lost. Because those are the people that are very vulnerable, and they're not really going to reach out. I know from experience, by the time you do feel the courage to reach out, it's really hard to find where you need to go. So personally, my goal working with our chapter is to link all of the resources in our community. And that means coming to roundtable discussions and seminars and meeting people and exchanging information and resources and finding a way to get to the community.
Thank you. How do people get in contact with you?
Yes. We need you guys to be at the walk.
Yeah. How do they get in contact with you?
Oh, AFSP.org/Houston. That'll take you right to us.
AFSP, American Foundation Suicide Prevention, AFSP.org/Houston. Bill Prasad is the Director of Outreach for Woodland Spring Hospital. So,
Good evening, everyone. We're in a war against shame, stigma, and the silence surrounding suicide. And after seeing those slides, the numbers tell us that we're not doing very well in that war. When I saw the slide dealing with suicide among the various races, I looked around this room and realized that this is a demographic mirror for those escalating numbers. That in some age brackets, the suicide increase among certain ages of women is up 60%. Certain age brackets among men, it's up 30% when you compare 2016 to 1999. If cancer or heart disease increased by 60%, people would be outraged. At this point, they're not. Over at our hospital, the therapists are on the front lines trying to prevent suicide, trying to show the patients that suicide is not plan B. It drills all the way down to the minutia of therapists going into the men's room or the ladies' room every day and checking to make sure that the trash cans are lined with paper bags and not plastic. Next month, we will open an adolescent unit in our inpatient. So we'll be on the front lines in reference to trying to prevent suicides among our adolescents, our kids that at times don't see their next birthday. They just see a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So as we face this war, it's going to take more than just one hospital. It's going to take all of us together trying to break that silence, trying to erase that stigma, trying to get rid of that shame. Because if we don't work together, we're going to lose this war.
thank you, Don. And Susie is with our Intercare Hospital.
Hi, I'm Susie, and I'm with Intercare North Hospital. How many people know where this hospital is located? Hands. 1960 and 45. And we've been at that same location for decades. A lot of our employees have been there 20, 25, 30 years. That's the dedication we have from our staff. And I wasn't going to talk today because I wasn't feeling well, but I can't let down Miss Kim and Pastor Ken here. Thank you so much for having me. When I walked in the door, I saw Meg Doyle over there, and she said, you are everywhere. And that's my job, to be everywhere. I'm from here. I live here. How many of you have I personally met with somewhere in your place of business, hands? See, now, I'm not doing my job correctly because not everybody raised their hands, and I've been with Intercare now on October 31st, 2 years. So I'm asking myself why, if it is my job to be the community outreach coordinator and educate, why have we not met? Especially police, I'm kind of sad about that. But so find me afterwards so we can get together, because it really is my job to educate the community. I love that I get to work with Miss Denise over here at CISD. A lot of counselors will say, well, such and such needs a therapist. Do you have any beds? People call me all day long, and that's okay. That's my job. I'm not a marketing manager or a business development person for Intercare. I'm about working for all of you here in the community. That is my job, to be your point person. So please, let's get together. I love that we're all here together, and let's use each other as resources. That's number one important, right? So what I want to talk about is how many of you, raise your hand, think the appropriate place, if your child, let's just say as an example, is talking about committing suicide, how many of you would take them to, let's say, Texas Children's of the Woodlands? How many think that's the appropriate place to go? Raise your hand. No one thinks that's the appropriate place to go? Okay. where would you go? You don't know? Church? Okay. How about you? Where would you go?
You're pointing at me.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't go anywhere right away.
Really? Okay. Okay.
I would sit with him or her until I felt it was safe to try to find out where the right place would be.
Okay, let's ask for, how about you on the end there in the black? Where do you think the appropriate place is to take
I've
your child?
lived it, Cypress Creek.
Okay.
no offense.
Okay, none taken, none taken.
Right.
A lot of people will rush their child to the ER, and I want to talk about that. ER is not a place for a child with a mental health issue. Did y'all know that places like Cypress Creek and Woodland Springs and Intracare are actually emergency rooms? They are open 24/7, 365. Like you said, you would sit with your child until you felt you knew the answer or where to go.
Well, not necessarily the answer, but just to, level out a little bit.
A lot of people will say, well, my child tried to hang themselves at school today, but I think we can handle that at home because I'm going to sit them in front of me for the next 24 hours and stare at them. That's really not the appropriate way to deal with it. You cannot possibly take that in your hands and your heart and your mind and stare at your child for the next 24 hours. It's just not the way to do it. This week at Intracare, I had 4 different school districts have children admitted under the age of 13. And that was just this week. I'm not saying it's one person from each school district. It was many students. We actually have a waiting list. It's super important that we get the care to the child immediately. You can bring your kid into any facility anytime, 24/7, 365. These facilities never close. Let's say we took a child to Texas Children's of the Woodlands, who I love. They're a great facility. They're going to be sitting there completely anxious, not knowing what to do. Mom and dad are stressed. Everyone's stressed. There's someone next to them crying. There's someone over here sneezing. There's someone over here bleeding. They're going to get to you when they get to you. It could be 3-4 hours. Yes.
I take call at Texas Children's in the emergency room, so I just want to clarify a little bit. Texas Children's does employ a company called Mental Health Solutions, and we do visit the patient usually within 30 minutes, sit down with them, give them resources. If they need to be transported, we do send them to Intracare or wherever has beds available that's a good fit for the family. So.
And how long would you say the average time waiting in that ER is?
So the goal is within 3 hours. It used to be 11 to 12 hours. Since Mental Health Solutions started, it's within 3 to 4 hours that they've been seen and sent out, unless there's not a bed available.
Exactly. So let's talk about some statistics that I have here. These statistics are about emergency room and mental health care. According to NAMI, 1/4 of the patients on Medicaid who visited the emergency room did not receive outpatient follow-up within 30 days. 38% of mental health patients in the emergency room had waited 7 hours to see a mental health professional. In 21% of the cases, that wait was more than 10 hours. I have lots of statistics here, but my main point is the best solution is to get them immediately to a Cypress Creek, an Intracare, a Woodland Springs. We do take 5 and up. We have a lot of 5-year-olds, and it isn't just 5-year-olds from CPS or from a residential treatment center. These are kids in our neighborhoods. We have a very open dialogue at home. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she says, well, why, Mom, would a 5 or 6-year-old need mental health help? And I said, well, the why isn't as important as the how, the when, and what we can do to help them. And it is very important especially at, say, a middle school age, to get this open dialogue going, which is why I love to take Kim with me to see these counselors. It is my ultimate goal to get some more Cassie Join for Hopes in Klein ISD and Tomball ISD and Spring ISD inside Fair. Please let me help you. Let me be your point person so you don't have to wait in an emergency room or question, should I stay home with my child? What should I do? Please let me be your resource. If you need the name of a therapist in the area, a psychiatrist in the area, my phone is on 24/7. Please give me a call. Let me be your support system. I'm not just here for the schools, the hospitals, the therapists, the doctors. I'm here for community members. So whatever you guys might need, please think of me as your resource. And if you'd like my information, you can get with me afterwards and I'll give you a card.
Thank you. So, Bill, I forgot to ask you, how can people get in contact with you or to the facility?
We have a phone number?
Yes, we do. And we also have a website. So woodlandspringshealth.com.
The woodlandspringshealth.com. I'm repeating for those that are wrong.
Oh, sure. So woodlandspringshealth.com, and then our phone number would be 936 270 7572.
7572.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that when it comes to suicidal ideation, we should take it seriously.
Yes.
And whatever route you take, you should address it quickly and take it seriously.
Yes. So with that said, just imagine having a suicide-safer community where everybody's ready, willing, and able to provide suicide first aid. We'll talk really briefly. I'll want to end with this. There are many different facets to suicide. It is not a one-size-fits-all. So if you can imagine these contributaries of life, if you will, and that this is a river of suicide. This dam that's here is life protecting things that are in everybody's life, and it's different for everybody. And all of these contributaries that start at the headway of the river has this life protecting things going on. But every now and then that barrier gets penetrated and people go into this river of suicide. So imagine this river of suicide in our community. Okay. Now imagine if you had somebody that was in the water and you were a lifeguard standing on the edge of the shoreline and you saw somebody in the river and they were drowning. You have been trained on how to safely enter the water, get the person that's drowning and bring them back to the shoreline, okay? Because you don't want them going over the river. You don't want them going over the waterfall and ending up dying by suicide, okay? So these contributaries in the river is an analogy, if you will, a metaphor towards having thoughts of suicide, having suicidal behaviors, and ending up in death and harm. This is part of what we teach in the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills class, okay? And you can see that this is also divided into different actions, words, physical, and feelings. These are some of the invitations, if you will, that people are putting up. Giving away possessions. All of my problems will end soon. Being desperate or angry or helpless or hopeless. A lack of interest in their appearance. Having sleep disturbances. It's not just any one thing. It's a combination of multiple things. And the context that the people are in also has a connotation on how they deal with life. So if I'm with law enforcement, there's a whole different culture that's in law enforcement. That's different from the fire department. That's different from EMS. That's different from healthcare. Imagine being a pediatric nurse and you have a lot of baby deaths that occur. That can become somewhat traumatic to you. And not burying the emotions. But I like to say as a chaplain, I'm going to put myself into situations that I want people to verbally throw up on me. I want them to get the pain and the poison that's within them out so they can heal. So how do you talk to somebody? And actually, that's the wrong thing to say, because I'm not doing talking. I'm asking questions to draw out of them the poison that's within so that they can have the healing effect that can occur. And that's what part of the training is all about. So we have prevention, we have intervention, and we have postvention. Living Works has a series of trainings that we do. The suicide talk is about an hour-and-a-half class that just uses the word suicide in the sentence. It's to get over that stigma of even saying it. Safe talk is how you talk to somebody who is having thoughts of suicide and getting them to somebody who can provide the help. That's about a 3 to 4 hour class. Assist is the actual intervention. It's applied suicide intervention skills training. That's a 2-day class. I have another instructor that co-facilitates with me. You are actually doing actual interventions in the class. It's activity-based. It's evidence-based. Over 2 million people worldwide have been trained in it. Both the Safe Talk and the Assist is what we're bringing through Cassidy Join for Hope into the school systems here. And we would love to be able to get more of this out into the community across this entire spectrum, because this is an issue that I believe is a public safety issue. It's a public health issue, and we need to address it head on and not be afraid of it. Postvention, Suicide to Hope, is a 1-day class, and that's for the case management after somebody has attempted. Now, I'm on the committee for the state of Texas now that's with Living Works. We're hosting here in the Woodlands the Suicide or Living Works Trainer Conference. We're going to have all the trainers that are trained to teach all of this here in the Woodlands, and we're opening up suicide talk to the public for clinicians to get training. Most of the courses that I teach, including all of these, also provide continuing education unit for professionals. So if you have that, we can provide CE units as well. And we're working with Intracare Hospital and their CEO. I'm still trying to work on getting a clinical director for our nonprofit, but we have that in California. I need to get it here in Texas. So this is Safe Talk. Basically, somebody has a thought of suicide. The Safe Talk person talks to them and hands them off to the person that does assist. Assist hands them off if needed to the mental health professionals. We have to work as a team, mental health, peer, and chaplain. I talk with people in the spiritual and faith-based, and I say the word secular, and I say, get away from me. I'm spiritual. And I talk with the mental health professionals in the secular environment, and a lot of times I say spiritual, and they say, get away from me. We don't deal with that. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever had an anxious thought? Okay, now let me ask you. It may not be you. Maybe you know somebody that was like this, but that anxious thought was so bad, you physically got ill. You wanted to throw up, right? So did I not just describe an emotion that had a physical component to it? Okay, now, did that emotion also change your perception of how you were thinking about your situation? So now I have an emotion, have a physical, and have a cognitive. Now, because your thinking changed, your behavior changed. I guarantee you there's also a spiritual component there. Now, if you were to look at a 5-band equalizer, and each layer of the equalizer, physical, emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and spiritual, everybody has their own wavelength, if you will. Some people have their spiritual wavelength all the way down at 0. Some people, it's all the way up. But all of us have our own unique wavelength. If you remember that thing that I showed you at the beginning about the crisis situation that the chaplain enters into, this thing here, okay? Okay, when a chaplain enters into somebody's situation, we enter in the content of the crisis. We know what the crisis is, but we don't know the context of the person's life. We don't know where they're at. We don't know what's normal for them. We have to learn what's normal for that person because they've gone down into this pit. And what our job is to keep them shallow and to reduce the time that they're in the pit. So that takes some assessment capabilities. We don't know if they have any faith or if they are full of faith. So we need to be there for them based upon who they are, right? And what we do for them in this triad of care is help them and empower them to get out of the pit so they're doing for themselves. We don't want to do for them. We want them to own their plan. So there's a skill to doing that. That's what you need to learn. And that's what we hope that you will allow us to partner with you and to partner with all the people that are up here at this table so that we can have a community that's suicide safer and that everybody in this room and everybody that's watching is not going to dismiss, or avoid, but is going to be willing to overcome the stigma of mental health among a host of other mental health issues and suicide and do something about it. We ought not to be standing on the side of that river watching somebody going over the waterfall. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I'm going to open it up to questions if you care. We are over, so if you need to leave, I understand.
I just want to add, I'm new in town. My name's Julie Overstreet. I'm the former Director of Outreach and Development for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Brazos Valley. I'm excited to be in Montgomery County now and starting to do outreach for NAMI Greater Houston. So my focus is here in Montgomery County because this is where I'm at, and because there's a whole bunch of resources in Greater Houston that need to come up here. I want to point out that NAMI is here, that NAMI's mission is to support, educate, advocate for folks living with mental health conditions as well as their families. They do that through having support groups that are peer run. Our family support groups are run by families who have been through it and then go off to training to become certified. So we have those going on twice a week. We also have education classes from everything from parents, families, peers who live with mental illness, veteran families. My husband's a vet, so that's very close to me, as well as presentations for schools, etc. All of those are at no cost. So there's no barrier for somebody who needs help to get the help that they need. And then, of course, with advocacy. My role is I now work for the Woodlands Integrated Care Hospital, and we're a totally new type of hospital. We are not acute care. So we're not the Woodland Springs, but we're kind of in between NAMI and acute care. So we're kind of in that prevention area where we both work for preventing going up to the crisis level, as well as like a step down, that once somebody's out of crisis, if they still need their recovery plan tweaked, they can come check themselves in an inpatient environment and be safe for from 23 hours to up to 7 days. We use a social psycho rehab model for that. So we're working very closely right now with NAMI to offer those services. So I just wanted to say those are available here in the community as well.
Julie, how can people get in contact with you?
Well, we are brand new. So I'll just give you my email address because I'm working on our website right now. My email address is julieoverstreet77.
Julie Overstreet77
at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And you could always reach me here because I'm believing that Julie and I are going to hook up. So.
Sure are. I'm excited.
Anybody here, as a matter of fact.
Is it Julie or Jay?
It's Julie, Julie, Overstreet, Overstreet, 77 at gmail.com.
Constable Cash.
And we have some cards. I'd like, if you're interested in one, it has a lot of the law enforcement side, emergency contacts, dispatch, our office, the Veterans Group, Tri-County. We've got a card, I think, for everybody here. We may be a few short. But if you carry that in your wallet, also have it. We talked to a lot of pastors. They get a lot of calls from their people about a cousin or somebody that's having a problem. And that's another outlet they have a contact. They say, please call these numbers. We had a call recently, just in the last few days, where a veteran was talking to the crisis line while they were talking to dispatch, tell him where he was at. He was talking about killing himself. So having the numbers available, we went to the VA, the American Legion, VFWs gave them a lot of cards. They get a lot of information, but this has the local stuff. That's Tri-County, our office.
Thank you for bringing that.
We are the transportation for these patients from Tri-County to the private facilities or wherever they're gonna go. Well, they talked about when you take them to an emergency room, they're there up to 48 hours, and then a order, and we have to pick them up there. We will respond. I know Ryan's guys call us a lot. We get a lot of calls in South County and different parts of the county. We respond to help their officers, and we take these people directly to better care. We try to bypass the hospital. It ties up the emergency room. They can treat them for a little bit, but they're not the people that need to be treated. Same way with the jail. A lot of times we can convert them from the jail to a facility because depends what their conditions are. But these guys are all trained. I have, as of October 1st, I have 11 guys. We started our crisis intervention team last October. They're averaging about 60 calls a month right now. So all my guys, from myself all the way down, are trained in mental health. Plus, we're starting to advance that. Any training y'all have, if it's open to us, I like to get my officers.
Ryan, can I bring up what we're doing?
Absolutely, please.
Okay. CareForce probably has about 60 courses that we provide nationally, and I am currently in the process of taking all of them and putting them into TCOL format, which is Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I wrote the course for California's proposed Peace Officer Standards and Training, and I've trained like 2,000 law enforcement chaplains throughout the state. So what our goal is to actually get it into the database for TCOL, everything we do. So all the mental health first aid, all the crisis intervention courses, our chaplain courses. So it's going to be offered throughout the state. And Constable Gable has opened up his training facilities. They'll be the presenter. In California, our agency is actually the presenter. So it's handled a little bit differently. So once that gets listed, if I'm understanding this properly here in Texas, because I still don't know what I don't know, I'm learning. The agency will be the presenter, and then we'll get a call if any agency wants it, and then we can arrange with you guys when and where to come and teach it. And that talks to the rest of the group that's here too. We really want to take the training out that we provide and bring it into the community. We want to bring it to the churches. We want to help develop crisis response teams that they can reach inside the church and that can also be utilized outside the church. And because it's going to be standardized, it's national and international best practice standards, then we're going to be able to network them together in mutual aid. So when the next hurricane comes and stuff, the churches can work together, or the mental health hospitals can work together, or whatever, and then be networked into law enforcement. So law enforcement also knows, and first responder and EMS, that everybody's got the same training. So we want to help facilitate working together as a community and raising the bar up so it can become a national beta site, if you will. People can look at it.
Answer that real quick. Phil, so not only HPD, we're going to be training there as well, but mainly hopefully through Ryan. We just had a meeting with my PO, as you know, is going to be the county commissioner judge. But we've got a meeting Friday. We're hoping to have a state standard for chaplaincy as well, so that as guys get trained, this is the standard for law enforcement. This is the standard for going forward, so that we have that for everybody, so that they'll be trained in safe talk, in assist, so that you'll have I guess a bigger pool is what I'm trying to say to respond, and particularly for Judge Mack, because you have what, 90?
We have close to 80 now.
80 chaplains, yeah.
Yeah, my hope is to continue to feed more chaplains into what Judge Mack has been doing, so it goes bigger. Because I believe you're up in North County, and you've got contacts down here in South County that would have an interest in this.
Yes.
I would love to talk with you so we can get you trained and then get evaluated into Judge Mack's organization. So we'll go to Rachel, and then we'll go to Meg. So Rachel.
Just a resource that they have at the Woodlands United Methodist. They have a survivors of suicide group that meets on the first and third
Tuesday of the month. They also have one at the same time for military,
Okay.
anybody with PTSD, that's there. So that's, I know that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they have them in Kingwood, Cypress, here, all over. And I've come across a lot of people that don't know about it. And some of the questions or comments that we've had at those meetings is something more that's for kids, for these teenagers to come in, because if all these kids, the statistic, we've talked about them, and all these kids that are affected by it, like having groups for them.
What I'd like to recommend, please support Cassidy Join for Hope.
Yeah.
Because the best thing to do is to work through organizations that are already working in the community and not duplicating any efforts. Not saying that you were doing that,
no.
But we need to expand her efforts and the foundation's efforts and have these student-led clubs occur. So thank you.
Can I add to that again? Sorry to interrupt, but just quickly, if you do have students in schools, we would love to get a club into those schools.
Yes.
Because the more schools we're in with the clubs for Cassidy Join for Hope, the more kids we're going to reach, and hopefully therefore lower our suicide rate amongst teens.
Is it just intermediate and high school? I'm assuming you don't go into the elementary level.
But obviously, there are elementary ages that they do need some sort of hope club or kindness, something to kind of address the topics on that.
I have a daughter in elementary who's had some personal issues, and she actually sees a therapist. So it's definitely something that I would love to talk to you all about.
Yeah.
We had a middle school where, I don't know who knows Eric's story, he's part of the Christian Media Association, Motorcycle Association. And he gave a talk. They had 40 students from one middle school, come forward saying they had suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school.
Yeah, the Safe Talk training starts at age 15. Meg.
I'm Meg Doyle. I'm a mom of a 3-time suicide attempt survivor. And so I launched a website dedicated for parents to go to when their child's in a mental health crisis. And I'm listing resources, mental health providers solely for adolescents to kind of reduce the stress and that overwhelming, what the heck do I do right now process. And I just launched it. Right now I have providers like psychiatric hospitals, therapists, counseling centers, alternative peer groups, that sort of thing in Houston and Greater Houston. And I'm looking to sign on some more providers. The struggle that I'm finding is that a lot of providers can't take any more, their caseload's just so immense. And so they just can't advertise in that regard. But so I am looking to expand that website. It's the MB Safe Harbor. MB stands for Mama Bear,
So
that's what I am.
mbsafeharbor.com. Mama Bear, mbsafeharbor.com.
And another thing that I'm working on with John Hereford from Woodlands First Baptist, we're starting a Fresh Hope for Teens group. It's a faith-based peer support group that was started by a pastor out of Nebraska, who he himself has struggled with bipolar. And it's going to be for teens and also for the parents. We go through facilitator training, and I'm definitely going to sign up for some of your classes as well. And then also we're hosting a mental health conference in January 26th at the Woodlands First Baptist, called In the Belly of the Whale. And we'll have several speakers and vendors there, and we're hoping to build it up. So, and now I have to run and go get my daughter from her APT group.
Yeah, we're way over. We'll be available if you'd like to talk, or at least I will, but thank you for this evening. And Gary,
I just had one other thing. There's pastors here. One of the things that we're doing now is we've been working with Texas Veterans Commission on their mental health, and the chaplain that's there, his name is Craig Combs. So if there's any pastors in here, anybody that's connected to the church leadership, let me know, because we're trying to spark interest to host this Warrior Wise is what they have at the state at Austin. And so if anybody wants to contact me, I have some cards to hand out, and then on Facebook as well, CS Ministries Facebook. If you're interested in the We Are Stronger movement, we're going to be actually hosting that October 12th with signups for that small group. But so pastors that are, or church members that are interested in leadership, that are interested, also in law enforcement, we're going to be doing that. We're looking to spark the Warrior Wise, and we can have that. We're going to have some folks that are showing interest.
Ma'am, before you leave, can you give me the date again for your program at First Baptist?
January 26th.
Thank you.
Just one last thing I forgot to announce. We are working with AFSP. We are offering on October the 5th at our hospital, which is 1120 Cypress Station. Waikisha Thomas McKinney is doing Talk Save Lives, and she's doing that from 9 to 10:30 a.m. We're providing a free continental breakfast, and if you're a therapist, you get 1.5 CEUs. And this Friday, for the police in the room, we have Roman Aguilar from the city of Houston doing a wonderful presentation on gangs and how it affects our students and what colors mean what and what language means what. Also at 9 o'clock on Friday at our hospital. So please feel free, anyone to attend. There's a
Yes, sir. Yeah, John Herford with the Williams Perspective. So if you have any questions about the conference, touch base with me. And then just for your FYI, some of you know this, but Fresh Hope is a support group, peer-to-peer support group for those with mood disorders. And we meet weekly at the church. So if anybody has a question, please follow my shirt sleeve.
Dr. Wall, would you mind closing this out in prayer?
Father, we are moved by the tremendous need in our community. It's overwhelming. Thank you for these people representing so many different ministries. It's just thrilling to see how you've raised up people with passion and ability, now developing these networks. I pray, Father, that you'd continue to enhance these networks and connections, and you'd enhance the understanding on the Christian leadership across this community, all of the potential tools that are there to be of help. And for those right now in our midst, in our community that are contemplating suicide, Father, I pray for intervention, for provision of someone that could be of help right now. Through it all, I pray that our Lord Jesus would be honored, that the King would become more and more lovingly control of each of our lives. And we trust ourselves into his hands. We pray in his name. Amen.
Thank you so much. My number, if you'd like it, is 949-324-2192. I'm very happy to be here to help serve you. So I'll stay here.
I know, right? Please take off. Just can't come off. Dude, that's crazy. You being a judge?